Hello, Herstory fans, and welcome to episode 23. And today we are going to be talking about Anne Lister or Gentleman Jack. This episode has been requested by the lovely Hayley. So, Hayley, this episode is for you. I hope you enjoy Anne Lister, Gentleman Jack. As always, if you would like to see me do an episode on somebody, please comment below or head on over to our Facebook page, the Herstory Girls, and write us out a little comment or send us a little message or, whatever. I am open to your suggestions, and I like finding out about new people and new stuff, so other people's suggestions are always welcome. So, Anne Lister, Gentleman Jack, landowner, diarist, and out and proud lesbian of the Victorian era. Born 3rd of April 1791 in Halifax, West Yorkshire, she was the second child and the eldest daughter of Jeremy Lister, an ex-American War of Independence infantryman, and Rebecca Battle. In 1793, the family moved to Skelfer House at Market Weighton, where Anne spent her early years growing up. The Listers had 4 sons and 2 daughters, but only Anne and her sister Marion survived past the age of 20. Between 1801 and 1805, Anne was educated at home by the Reverend George Skelding, and at the age of 7, she was sent to school briefly, run by a Mrs. Higgs and a Mrs. Chettle in Agnesgate in Ripon. In 1804, she was sent to the Manor House School in York briefly, again, where she met her first love, Eliza Rain, daughter of an East India Company surgeon. The two met and shared a bedroom at 13, as it was a boarding school, but Anne was asked to leave after only 2 years. She was a bit of a naughty girl. Eliza had expected to live with Anne as an adult, but Anne began affairs with Isabella Norcliffe and Mariana Belcombe, who were also day pupils at the school. Eliza was driven into Clifton Asylum with despair, because it wasn't happily ever after for the two of them. Ironically, Clifton Asylum was owned by Mariana Belcombe's father. Just small world. So whilst being educated at home, Anne developed a keen interest in classical literature and Grecian history and mythology. She inherited Shibden Hall on her aunt's death in 1836 and drew from it a reasonable income from her tenants. Her wealth allowed her some measure of freedom to live life as she pleased. So she owned properties in town. She owned shares in canals and railways, mining and stone quarries. Anne was described as having a masculine appearance by lover Mariana, who was initially ashamed to be seen in public with her, because her appearance was quite often commented upon, that she looked manly. She dressed entirely in black and took part in activities that weren't seen as ladylike, such as owning a coal mine. Some people nicknamed her Gentleman Jack. Anne Walker, a wealthy heiress, meets Anne in the early 1820s. It's gonna get real confusing now because we've got Anne and Anne. So I'll try and keep it succinct. It might end up being Lister and Walker. So the women took communion together on Easter Sunday, 1834, in Holy Trinity Church in Goodramgate, and thereafter proclaimed themselves married. So homosexuality is, it's not only is it not legal to get married, it is illegal to be homosexual at this point in time. So that was their way of getting married and making a vow to each other. The church now holds a blue plaque at the site of the first lesbian marriage to be held in Britain. That's a questionable claim, but it's quite cute nonetheless. The couple lived together at Shibden Hall until Anne's death in 1840. Which Anne? I'm guessing. I'm guessing Anne Lister. They used both of their fortunes to improve the hall, building a waterfall and a lake, renovating the hall quite substantially, completely to their own design. In 1838, a Gothic tower was added to the main house as Anne's private library, Anne Lister's private library. That sounds divine. She also had a tunnel dug under the building to allow her staff to move around without disturbing her. Throughout her life, Anne retained a strong Anglican faith and was a Tory, interested in defending the privileges of the land-owning aristocracy. It was all going so well. Anne loved to travel and made her first trip to Europe in 1819 at the age of 28 when she went to Paris for 2 months with her aunt Anne. God, so many Annes. In 1824, she returned to Paris and went back again in 1826. Where she entered into an affair with a widow called Maria Barlow. In 1827, both Annes, Aunt Anne, Maria, set off from Paris on a tour of northern Italy and Switzerland. So Anne returns briefly to Shibden Hall in 1828, and then by 1829, she's off again to Belgium, Germany, the Pyrenees, and Spain, where she climbed Monte Pertito. Back to Shibden in 1831, she found life with Marion and her dad, Jeremy, just so uncomfortable. She left for the Netherlands with Mariana again straight away. Between 1826 and 1832, she only spent a few weeks at Shibden Hall. She was otherwise just roaming and doing her own thing. In 1834, she again visited France and Switzerland for her honeymoon with Anne. They return again in 1838 and climbed Vignale. I presume that's how you say it. Or Vignale. No doubt my dad will correct my pronunciation here. My fluent French-speaking papa. Which is that it's the highest peak in the French Pyrenees, and it's a 10-hour hike to the top. Her last and greatest trip began in 1839. Leaving Shibden with wife Anne in June and 2 servants, they travelled alone in a carriage through France, Denmark, and Sweden, and arrived in Russia in September. They left Moscow in February 1840 and travelled south along the Volga River to the Caucasus. Few people had visited this area, especially not women, and at times they needed a military escort due to local unrest against the Tsarist regime. Anne died. Anne Lister died on the 22nd of September 1840, aged 49, of a fever in Georgia whilst travelling with Anne, wife Anne. Anne had Anne's body embalmed. This is very confusing. Walker had Anne's body embalmed and brought back to the UK, where she was buried in the parish church in Halifax on the 29th of April 1841. Her tombstone was rediscovered in 2010, having been covered by a flaw in 1879. In her will, her estate was left to her paternal cousins, with Anne, wife Anne, being given a life interest. After being declared insane, wife Anne spent some years in the care of good old Dr. Belcombe, Clifton Asylum, and she died in 1854 at her childhood home of Cliff Hill in Lightcliff, West Yorkshire. She'd been unable to leave a will due to her mental state. There's a bit of speculation about whether she actually was mentally ill or whether her family just wanted to get their mitts on her monies. So Anne Lister is most famous for her diaries, which totaled over 4 million words. She began writing on scraps of paper in 1806, recording in secret code, with parcels sent to and from Eliza Raine. They eventually became 26 quarto volumes, and she continued writing right up until her death in 1840. Her handwriting was terribly hard to read, and around a sixth of the diary is encrypted in a code that Eliza and Anne devised, combining the Greek alphabet, punctuation, the zodiac, and mathematical symbols. It describes in great detail her lesbian love affairs, as well as her methods of seduction. She talks about everything: the weather, politics, social events, and her businesses. The diaries provide a vital and detailed first-hand account of the social, political, and economic events at the time. The code was deciphered by the last inhabitant of Shibden Hall, John Lister, and his friend Arthur Burrell, sometime before John's death in 1933. Not sure exactly when they cracked the code. Burrell advised burning the diaries straight away to destroy the salacious content, but instead John hid them behind a panel at the hall. Some have speculated that it was because of John's sexual orientation that he felt he couldn't destroy the diaries. It may be just because he thought it was an important story to tell. Who knows? Her diaries are described as a trilogy of early 19th century diaries. And in 2011, they were added to the register of the UNESCO Memory of the World Programme as a valuable account of the times that provides a comprehensive and painfully honest account of lesbian life and reflections on her nature, which make these diaries completely unique. They have shaped and continue to shape the direction of UK gender studies and women's history. Facts about Anne Lister. Helena Whitbread published some of the diaries in 2 volumes in 1998 and 1992. Their graphic nature led many to believe they were actually fictional or a hoax until documentary evidence established their authenticity. Biographies have been written by Jill Liddington and Angela Steedler. Dorothy Thompson and Patricia Hughes helped discover the first young diaries, and they helped in decoding the other codes used by Anne. Hughes published Anne Lister's Secret Diary for 1817 in 2006, and The Early Life of Miss Anne Lister and the Curious Tales of Miss Eliza Rain in 2010, which make use of the letters and the documents sent between the two of them, as well as some diary extracts. A conference is held yearly at Shibden Hall focusing on Anne's life along with gender and sexuality in the 19th century. Anne has inspired 2 BBC documentaries, a song, an episode of A Skirt Through History, and a 2019 BBC HBO TV series drama called Gentleman Jack, starring Saran Jones, which is utterly brilliant. Highly recommend. Penguin Books published a companion volume of newly transcribed and decoded entries from Anne's diaries to accompany it. Shibden Hall was donated to the Halifax Corporation in 1933 when John Lister, its last owner, died, and they opened it as a museum in 1934. The hall is currently open to the public and contains the West Yorkshire Folk Museum in an adjoining barn. The hall hosts a variety of restored workshops, including a brewery, basket weaving shop, a tannery, stable, and a collection of horse-drawn carriages. The park also contains a dry stone wall exhibition, children's play area, and mini steam railway. Gentleman Jack, the series, was filmed there and caused visitor numbers to treble, resulting in a need for extended opening hours, which is amazing. We love the heritage sector having a little boost like that when we're all just trying to survive in this recession. Well done, Shibden. The word lesbian hadn't even been coined in Anne's lifetime. And as I said before, homosexuality was most definitely still illegal. Relationships, though they went on, certainly were hidden, unacknowledged, and completely swept under the carpet. But Anne had absolutely no care for 19th century misogyny and homophobia. She dressed in thick black clothes and boots, a black cat sitting atop her tight black ringlets, striding confidently through the cobbled streets of Halifax. She was educated and haughty and attracted attention wherever she went. Men often jokingly propositioned her, others sent her abusive, mocking, anonymous letters. One practical joker placed an advert under her name in the Leeds Mercury seeking a husband. The people generally remark as I pass along how much I am like a man, was written. Anne confided in her diary, and she just poured it all out into her diary. Anne was called an unimaginable tomboy by her mother. Anne described her sexuality, she called it her oddity, and she also said, I love and only love the fairer sex. Anne trawled anatomy books to try and discover where her oddity was coming from, but finding no answers didn't make her feel ashamed. Her feelings were entirely natural because God had made her the way she was. So that was the way she was meant to be, which is an amazing outlook. Mariana broke Anne's heart when she decided to conform to societal expectations and marry a man in 1815. Anne not only watched the woman she loved wed another from the church pews, but as it was customary for female friends to accompany the bride and groom on honeymoon, Anne had to endure that, along with one of Mariana's sisters who also went along. Anne absolutely raged about it in her diary, saying that it was legal prostitution and her lover had sold her person to another. Over the ensuing years, Anne and Mariana would continue a clandestine affair and exchanged emotionally charged letters. But however, in August 1823, Anne was so excited because Mariana was on her way to Shibden to see her that she snuck out to surprise her lover, walking 10 miles in the rain over the moors. After several hours, she reached Blackstone Edge Cliff, where the carriage was trundling along. She leapt into the carriage beside the sleeping Mariana, but Mariana had company and was very embarrassed. Their relationship would never be the same after that. Mariana told her she was ashamed to be seen with such a masculine-looking woman. Anne's diaries were donated to Halifax Library by John Lister, along with the code to unlock it in 1933. A small team of researchers looked at them before suppressing it as unsuitable material. In the 80s, Helena Whitbread has a look at it again and takes up the research, and after 5 years in 88 released her book, When I Know My Own Heart, which is a gorgeous title, which caused a bit of a sensation. Until then, clear documentary historical evidence of sex between women had been absent, just erased from the historical record. Her diaries also talk about masturbation, which is another completely taboo subject. Though promiscuous in her earlier years, when Anne married Anne Walker in 1834, she took her vows very seriously and she remained faithful to her until her death. They lived openly together at Shibden, and Anne told her relatives that she was gay, and apparently they weren't surprised. This sort of cohabitation was outrageous at the time, absolutely outrageous, and it was the talk of Yorkshire, but they didn't care. Even when letters arrived congratulating Captain Lister and his wife on their happy connection, they just brushed it all off and carried on. So as I briefly mentioned before, poor Anne Walker was treated terribly after our Anne Lister died. Her relatives, believing she had a mental illness because she was gay, arranged for a policeman, a doctor, and a lawyer to break into Shibden, where they found her cowering behind a locked door, surrounded by papers and a brace of loaded pistols. She was carted off to Clifton Asylum, which is really, really sad, isn't it? It is thanks to her that the diary survived and made sure the final volumes made it back from the Caucasus, and hid them for John Lister to find later. No doubt her family would have destroyed them had they known their contents and gotten their hands on them. The diaries have just been painstakingly restored by a team of experts at the West Yorkshire Archives Service. This one. So, finally, summing up, living in a lesbian marriage in the 1830s demonstrated extraordinary courage. The determination to live life on her own terms continues to inspire those who discover Anne's story to this day. And that's why Gentleman Jack, the drama, just went down so well with people. Anne provides a lesson, even in our day and age, about being your authentic self and having a voice and using it to stand up for yourself. And Anne is a reminder to all of us that you have a right to be exactly who you are. And I love that about her. So there we go. That is the wonderful story of Anne Lister. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you've been inspired by her story like I was. And I hope that you will click like and hit subscribe and hit the little bell so that every time I post a new video, you will hear all about it. Head on over to the Facebook page, the Herstory Girls. Let us know in the comment section below who you would like to see an episode on, and I will catch up with you next time. Look after yourself, Herstory fans. Much love to you all. Bye bye.